Welcome back to Relax Radio with me, Nick, keeping you guys company all the way until 5 p.m. And we were talking about a lot of these things that is happening in the UK. And one of these things, that is happening right now in Northern Ireland is the violence. What's behind this violence and what is happening in Northern Ireland? What are these riots about? Well, we're going to be talking about that in a few. But, more than 70 police officers have been hurt in what police are calling the Northern Ireland's worst violence for years after this sporadic rioting in several towns and cities over the past 10 days. So, the government in Belfast, London, and Dublin had condemned the unrest, with the US calling for calm as police use water cannons for the very first time in 6 years, having come under attack again on Thursday night. So, that's just something that is happening right now. And while all of Northern Ireland's main parties have called for an immediate and complete end to the violence, they are divided about this case. So, who's behind this unrest? While there is no clear indication, who exactly is behind all of this, the unrest is being orchestrated rather by an organized group. The violence has been concentrated in areas where criminal activities, criminal gangs linked to loyalist paramilitaries have significant influence. So, there's an increasing evidence that senior figures in organizations such as the Ulster Defense Association and the Ulster Volunteer Force are allowing the trouble to proceed. So there's a lot of these analysts, suggesting loyalist paramilitaries of the Southeast Antrim UDA may have exploited an opportunity to kick back at the police service of Northern Ireland after a recent clampdown on criminality. Yeah, that's right. And in this area, especially around Carrickfergus. So that's just, some of the things right now that is happening. And it's not really clear exactly who's causing this, but they're saying that it could be these gangs and these criminal syndicates. So the paramilitary group is involved in many forms of organized crime, doing the untold damage to the community and exerting fear in neighborhood. This is what the police are saying. So in case you guys are wondering, this is all what's happening and where exactly is all of this violence happening and where has it been concentrated. So these violence involving these gangs of people, as many and as young as 12, started on the 29th of March in an area in London that is loyalist in favor of keeping the Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom. So since then, there have been protests rioting on a near nightly basis in a number of towns and cities, including Belfast, Carrickfergus, Ballymena, and Newtown Abbey. So the rioting has largely seen these loyalist youths throwing bricks, fireworks, and petrol bombs at lines of police officers and vehicles. I mean, that is just super deplorable in my opinion. I mean, to be doing this, especially in a time like this, and I can understand, it can be a lot of things, but I condemn violence in any way or form. You don't need to be violent to prove your point. And I really don't know what they're trying to achieve, because end of the day, people are just going to get hurt. People are going to be injured. People are going to suffer. And all you're going to do is put the country in a setback. So we don't really need that kind of violence. So on Wednesday night, the fighting escalated into a sectarian clash over a so-called peace wall in West Belfast. So that divides basically the predominantly Protestant and these loyalist communities from predominantly Catholic nationalist communities who want to see a united Ireland. So a gate that divides the two was smashed open. That's right. It was smashed open during several hours of disorder, and police officers and a press photographer were attacked, and a bus was hijacked and burned down completely. So parts of the Northern Ireland are split among these sectarian lines, and 23 years after peace deal largely ended Northern Ireland's troubles, which lasted almost 30 years and cost the lives of more than 3,500 people. So and these especially these groups, these criminal gangs, these paramilitary groups are and they're just trying to spark something else again, and that's not supposed to happen, especially right now. What is the point? What are you going to gain from all of this? And what is this got to do with Brexit? Well, unionist leaders have linked the violence to simmering loyalist tensions over the Irish sea border imposed as a result of the UK EU Brexit deal. So the new trading border is the result of the Northern Ireland's protocol introduced to avoid the need for a hard border on the island of Ireland. So yeah, this is just a lot of these things. You especially around those parts of Ireland, you can see a lot of these graffitis where they say "No Irish Sea border" and all of that, and it's just been damaging the trades and threatening Northern Ireland's place in the UK. So yeah, these protocols mean Northern Ireland remains in the EU single market for goods. So products being moved from Great Britain to Northern Ireland undergo EU import procedures. That's right. In case you guys are wondering, this is all got to do with the checkpoints. So it avoids the needs for checks on the Irish border as the EU custom rules are enforced at the Northern Ireland ports instead. So unions say it has damaged these trades and threatens these Northern Ireland's place in the UK. And in January, graffiti opposing the Irish sea border was daubed on walls in some loyalist areas, including parts of Bangor, Belfast, Glengormley, and the home of one of the Northern Ireland's main ports, Larne. So yeah, these Brexit checks were temporarily suspended amidst this, reported threats and against, a lot of these port workers in Larne and Belfast. Through the police later said that there was no evidence of any kind of a credible threat. So they said, okay, there was something like this, but then there wasn't enough of evidence to prove that this was, some kind of credible threat. There's nothing really going on. So back in March, a group which includes representatives of loyalist paramilitaries wrote to Boris Johnson to withdraw its support for the Good Friday Agreement. And that is the 1998 deal that effectively ended the trouble. So yeah, the Loyalist Communities Council said it was temporarily withdrawing its backing because of concerns about these protocols. I mean, this is just some of the things, that is, happening right now in Northern Ireland. This is just some of the things that is fueling the tension within the nation. So yeah, that's just one of the things, that they are addressing. And there are other factors, actually, other political factors involved as well. So some unionist leaders have attributed the violence to the decision to not persecute leaders of the Republican Sinn Féin party for breaching these COVID regulations at a time of a funeral of an IRA intelligence chief last June. So yeah, this was basically, Bobby Story's funeral. So it was very controversial. The attendance of the Deputy First Minister Michelle O'Neill at the funeral of Bobby Stern in June led to the biggest crisis in Northern Ireland politics since devolution was restored in January. So yeah, Miss O'Neill and other senior Sinn Féin figures were widely criticized for attending the funeral with claims they broke coronavirus guidelines. So yeah, a decision was later made, back then by the Public Prosecution Service not to prosecute anyone in connection with the funeral. And essentially, the whole crisis unfolded. And a lot of these people, in case you guys are wondering who this guy is, well, the North Belfast man was considered the head of intelligence of the IRA for a period from the mid-90s, being named as such as parliamentary privilege. So that is who he was. He was a very big figure in the IRA. And what happened at the funeral was basically, Miss Story's coffin was driven from his home into the Belfast late on Tuesday that night. So during his funeral, large numbers of these people essentially lined up in routes and courts, and it was followed at a distance by a large number of these mourners. So yeah, and then his body was taken to the funeral, to the cemetery. And a lot of this is because why it became so controversial was because Miss O'Neill was part of that funeral, which Sinn Féin said included no more than 30 people. They said no more than 30 people, but there's so many people. And critics have suggested, social distancing was also not maintained in these crowds that lined the streets as the hearse drove by, and by large groups of people who walked behind the hearse at a greater distance. So Miss O'Neill also went to this Requiem Mass in St. Agnes Church in Andersontown. And, about 120 people were in that place at the same time. So none of them were actually, following the coronavirus guidelines or regulations, set upon them. And they were breaking the rules. And because of this, it's because of this, a lot of the tension was rising. So yeah, it's just crazy. Many people expressed their anger at Miss O'Neill for failing to follow these guidelines. She insisted the public should follow, but she never followed it. So a lot of people are calling her a hypocrite. And, the guidance which had led to these loyalist band parades being canceled last summer, it's all because of this. So yeah, some people have also accused police of double standards after the Public Prosecution Service, the PPS, said there was not going to be any prosecution. And yeah, Mr. Bryan said he recognized people were angry. And yeah, this is coming from the chief constable, but they've refused to step down. He briefed, the Storm and Power Sharing executive on the disorder at an emergency meeting on Thursday and said he is open to dialogue with anyone who's willing to work with him to resolve the issues facing the community. And yeah, that's just some of the things, that is happening in Northern Ireland, and why it's getting so violent, why it's getting so crazy out there. And I mean, it is actually pandemonium right there right now. And every night, make sure you guys, be safe, and make sure you stay at home if you can, because this is just going to be more crazier as time goes by. It's just going to be more violent, and you shouldn't get caught in the crossfire. But with that being said, we are going to step into a real quick break, and we'll come back more onto this as we go along in the show. And checking your time right now, though, it is 2:45. Good afternoon.